What to do? This is the Brothers on Books podcast, where we find great books that will give you real value and actionable steps and have fun in the process. Please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendations, or if you would like to be a guest host for a particular book you have in mind. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to would be greatly appreciated. And lastly, if you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. Episodes of the OGs, please visit brothersonbooks.com. And remember, if you're on a cold and stormy night and you want a nice bevy, we at the Brothers on Books go with Enja Matcha, the best matcha for the best brothers. I'm Alex Owa, and with me as always is Jack Owa. Jack, how you doing?
Pretty good. This is our second episode in the same physical location, I think. That's it.
I don't think that's true.
How many others?
Well, what one were you thinking of?
Myrtle Beach.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I don't think that's correct.
What other one have we been live for?
We never recorded together in Charlotte?
I don't think so.
Okay, but Jack, where are we right now?
We are in the great Linwood, Michigan, home for Thanksgiving. And it's a wild time here. The Lions are 8-2.
First time since 1962,
I think. Yeah. And fittingly enough, we are discussing football today. Kind of. By the man, the myth, the legend, Tom Brady himself, the TB12 Method. I heard. Well, did you hear him on Patrick Bet David?
I don't think I actually ever listened to that.
So that was a good discussion. I recommend it. And that's really when I thought, okay, I'll actually like pick this for our book draft and learn a little bit more about his pliability work and his hydration regimen. So
hydration. You know, some people have criticized me that hydration for me is an issue.
Huh. Just cramping a little bit, huh?
Just a little bit.
So what were your initial thoughts on the TB12 method?
I guess to start with, the first quarter of the book, I feel like he just keeps talking about this thing, pliability. Maybe not necessarily a quarter of the book. First, like 40 pages. And the whole time I'm like, oh, what he's talking about. I don't know what this is. I don't really know what he means by this. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like a godsend. Sure, I would love to do this.
So maybe we should go through what it is.
Right.
Maybe we should compare it to stretching and massage.
Okay, so I guess the way I would define, well, he gives a technical definition, but what I would essentially define pliability as doing is where you are essentially getting a massage while you are almost flexing or working out a specific muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's like maybe, I mean, this would be the first time ever to do this, but I would say just for viewers, I will say I have not been doing a lot of this, but I did just start because I just recently finished. And one of the ailments he talks about that pliability can help is tennis elbow. And I often have discomfort in my elbow. And the exercises he said to do was to essentially take your arm, go this way, and then apply pressure from your wrist to your elbow. And you're doing that while you're flexing your wrist up and down. And then to switch to go the opposite, and then to switch from your bicep to your shoulder, and then to extend outwards like this from your elbow to your shoulder as you're extending your arm, from contracted to extended.
And you're massaging towards your heart, he always says.
Right. You always, yeah.
Yeah.
And
is that because the waste is getting into your bloodstream, or why is that? I don't quite get it.
That sounds
good. I don't remember why he said that.
I don't think he said, but I've heard a lot of other people say that.
Yeah. Because like stretching, he's saying just lengthens the muscles, but it's not softening them. And you want to soften them because if you soften the muscles, then it can absorb more force. Or it just like if your muscle gets hit or there's force on it, it disperses the impact more.
The force is dissipated throughout all the muscles instead of it being localized to the specific point of, I guess, contact.
Yeah, it's kind of how they say, like, if you're about to get tackled, you're supposed to like go loose or like numb.
Yeah.
Kind of like you're not supposed to tighten up because then you're more likely to get hurt.
Brittle. I sort of, as I was reading it, I don't know if I like thought back to how people used to describe almost trees. Like if you put a very stiff tree in a strong wind, it will crack, get like thrown up. But if you take a tree that can bend, like that's why you see trees sway. So they're not. I guess the point is that the force is dispersed throughout the entire body. They don't break in half. They can kind of like bend more or less when they're getting hit, and then like just come back to neutral. But
Yeah.
but back to my elbow is I feel like I did this for a day and a half, and my elbow felt after I felt some discomfort on Monday from when I was done playing. I did this on Tuesday, and then almost immediately my elbow felt fine.
Cool.
I would say so. This is definitely something I'm going to keep doing everywhere.
Will you buy so he mentions a couple rollers, a roller and a sphere that has vibrations in it, and that's supposed to, I guess, stimulate the muscle even more when you're doing this. Are you going to buy those?
I was thinking about buying the roller, but I haven't done it yet. What about you?
Yeah, because I do foam rollers a lot, and when I started reading this book, like it is kind of harder to flex and relax while you're on the foam roller. So I am curious what it feels like to have like a pulse going while you're rolling. I find it hard to like contract, like when I'm doing my hamstrings. I find it hard to like contract my hamstrings while I'm on the foam roller and rolling up towards my butt.
Yeah, that would be difficult.
So that was but all the other ones, like I do a lot of the ones on my shins and calves now, and I mean, he's saying like he's really trying to pitch his TB12 team.
Yeah.
Seems like a bit of like maybe he's got some licensed practitioners that they get licensed so they can perform the pliability work.
I mean, it seemed a little bit I don't remember if you remember the book Weightlifting is a Waste. It almost seemed like a very informative like infomercial about like why you should buy into these products. And because kind of like when I was reading this for the pliability stuff, most of the foam roller, some of that, like I felt like you couldn't do yourself, but a lot of it, I mean, you're married, so I felt like a lot of it you could incorporate just with your significant other. You could both just essentially massage each other down, and it doesn't take that long of a time. And he gives very specific instructions of how to do it. It seemed pretty easy, I would say, and like detailed instructions. Because yeah, in the book he says like they won't be as good as a certified TB12, person, but they'll do. So
And what do you think of the fact that he also was kind of preaching resistance bands, just like Jake Quish?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. Like, resistance bands are the best method for functionally building strength. And I think he's also right about how people train. I've actually now recommended this book to a lot of the people I play competitively with because I think it's probably more of an issue in football, but people get so in strength intensive sports, I feel like people get very caught up in just doing something a lot of instead of like training for the sport. Like you're way better off, I feel like, doing functional movements for what you're actually going to be doing instead of being able to squat 500 pounds. I don't know in what realm I would ever have to squat 500 pounds. I don't know in what realm you would either.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he said people focus more on like optimizing strength maximizing strength instead of optimizing it. In the sense that there's a kind of a ceiling of how much you really need to go before it starts becoming detrimental to other things. And I was starting to think of the way he talks is basically Chaos Kings, or the way I think of like not getting knocked out of the game in a physical sense. Like he's talking about if he can just stay on the field longer, he gets more experience, and then that compounds over time to the point where the people that are more athletic don't stand a chance because he's got, 15 more, 10 more years of experience that's been able to compound on itself just because he's been able to stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I thought sort of in line with that, he brings up the point of, I think in an NFL season, he said you have 100 practices, and then he sort of went on that tangent where, if, well, it's not a tangent, but if practice makes perfect, and I'm, through this pliability training, which to me, I think is essentially just conditioning yourself to be more durable, especially in a contact sport. If I'm able to practice 90 times, because I'm always healthy versus someone who gets hurt a lot, who's maybe practicing 60 times, you're practicing, you have an additional 30 more practices. So it's an extra 50% of practice over them that you have. So you're getting a lot better compounded over, a life career. Like you're going to be substantially better.
Yeah.
And then I think he also brings up the example of, if you average 7 catches a game or 10 catches a game or whatever, 7 catches a game, if you're out half the season, that's 56 catches, which is subpar. If you're playing the entire season, that's 100 and I guess now 19 catches, which would bring you
It's
to
like Pro Bowl status.
Pro Bowl, or, for a long enough career, it would be a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah. The Bale's just not getting knocked out. Were there any things about Tom Brady that surprised you? Some of his stories, maybe.
I mean, he's like, okay, so like when he calls himself unathletic, I kind of roll my eyes. Like, come on.
He was drafted by the Yankees.
Right. You were a dual pro athlete, drafted both in professional baseball and professional soccer, professional football, a D1 college, a major D1 college football player. You're 6'4". You're obviously like very strong. I think it's safe to say, comparatively, you probably are not that fast, but to the average, 95% of the population, you're probably freakishly fast. So when he says he's not like athletic, maybe he's not like freakishly athletic, but he is obviously very athletic.
And he is, big arm. So I was a little surprised. His dad seemed a little bit ahead of the time. He talked about how he was editing some of his football footage and sending it out to schools. I think there are whole companies devoted to that now. So I think he said he made like 20 VHS tapes and that's all he had, and they sent them out to schools. Thought that was kind of impressive, and kind of how humble he was to, even in his pro years, to go back and talk to some of his coaches in high school and before, like to get tips, or it just seemed like he's very humble and not afraid to ask for pointers from people. Which because I've heard stories like Michael Vick. I know, like they used to talk. I used to hear stories like about how they would ask him if he's like reviewing the tapes, like the film, and like he would say yes, but he was never like watching, and like he kind of like not taking advice from people. But it seemed like he got better in his later years. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that are so good they think they probably don't need to ask for help or ask for advice.
I mean, he brings up sort of at the end of the book the fact that since he never felt like he was near the top athletically, he always felt like he had to work harder, as well as always being, he was always taking like losses. So he had to develop kind of a mental strength, which I think is very important, as well as be open to criticism and like how to, get better, which is, I think, sort of a testament of what you're saying, of constantly being open to new advice.
Yeah, because I think he was 5 years at Michigan, I want to say. In his fourth year, he finally got the starting job, and then the next year, his last year, there was a very highly touted freshman that came, and then they basically split time. A lot of those first games were like one person would get one quarter, the other would get the other, and then the coach would decide at halftime who's playing the second half.
Yeah, which is really weird.
Yeah,
Like I've never
so
heard
like
of
that
since.
Yeah, so he had to sit on the bench a lot. I mean, he sat behind, I think, Greasy, and then I think they won a national championship that year. And then, yeah, he finally got the job, and then he got it taken away from him. But like, he always kept practicing hard, and yeah, solid mental fortitude, I guess.
I
What do you
mean,
think
well,
of? Go ahead.
just I mean, totally somewhat unrelated, but the one thing that really surprised me is he said he stopped playing baseball and he focused on football because he felt baseball was harder on his body because he was a catcher and like all the
Uh-huh.
squatting down. What did you think of that?
I mean, I mean, for like when you watch him play, he releases the ball so quick. I don't know what he did like early in his career. I'm sure he's gotten shorter, but he really he really wasn't taking a lot of hits, and he wasn't running a lot.
Yeah,
So it's really his arm, and I would say, well, I don't know. I mean, being 6'4" and a catcher, I was shocked he was a catcher. Because that's like normally, I mean, are catchers normally that tall? Because yeah, it's really tough on your knees.
niche, yeah, it
Because
is.
you were a catcher.
Right. I remember. Well, I only played baseball up until I think I was maybe 11 or 12. But yeah, it was. I remember thinking it was hard on my knees at that point too. But I would have never said. I would have never in my life been like, yeah, I think baseball would be harder on my body than football. But maybe in this one instance, I could.
Well, what about comparing like soccer to football?
Harder on my body?
Yeah,
No,
you
no
don't think so?
chance.
Even if soccer players run a lot more, like long term? Because if you just think of like time spent on the field, number of interactions, like if you're a wide receiver,
mhm.
not like maybe running back, yeah, but like wide receiver playing in the outside, you're only probably on the field half the time, right? Because
Sure.
you got defense and offense, and like a soccer player's on the field the whole time,
Yeah, that's fair. It's a fair point.
and you're running way. It's not. I would think a soccer player averages more miles per game.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So I don't know. I used to some of the leg injuries. I don't know. I don't think it's as far away as one might think, I guess
Well,
is what I'm saying.
I guess I would put it this way. I think there's probably way more catastrophic football injuries.
Yeah.
Uh, if you want to say that maybe later in life, your hips or knee, I mean, hips, I know a lot of soccer players have hip problems, or you have like just bad cartilage in your knees. I could kind of see it for specific positions against football.
Yeah. Football players take a beating. Every time I watch it, I'm always like, these guys are crazy. What did you think of, well, Mr. Hydration? What did you think of the hydration part?
so it was kind of interesting that I had actually just been told that I needed to be. So he recommends drinking 100 ounces, or what for me would be half your body weight in ounces of water.
So if you weigh 200 pounds, drink 100
ounces.
ounces.
So yeah, so I'm a tad under 200. So I was told that probably about 2 months ago. I now shoot to drink 100 ounces of water a day. This week I've been pretty bad about it. When I'm at work, I'm pretty good about it. I have a 64-ounce bottle of water. I try to have, first thing I do when I get to work is I fill it up. I try to have it drank by lunch. And I try to drink another one by the time I leave.
Okay.
And then if I go and play sport, like usually when I'm going to hit at night, I fill it up right before I leave and try and finish that again. He also mentions electrolytes, like you should be taking electrolytes on top of the water, which I think is also important. Because when you sweat, you don't just perspire out water, but you're essentially losing out salts like minerals, which are important. And he actually does I would say, from a non-technical standpoint, he does a good job of describing this in the book. but those are necessary for your like not normal like bodily function. So you can be really water hydrated, but you can still start cramping. And this is actually something I feel like I've noticed myself when I'll go and drink a ton of water before, but then I still feel like I'm cramping. And I think it's because like my salts are imbalanced. So
And it also brings up caffeine will dehydrate you. So like maybe that normal number needs to be upped if you're drinking wine or coffee or tea. So
alcohol as well.
yeah, alcohol.
But
But
then
like so like Gatorade has electrolytes, right? But he's saying like the sugar is probably not. Probably
he was saying the sugar is detrimental.
yeah.
They, of course, sort of why I felt like this was somewhat of an infomercial. He is selling
His electrolyte
his
powder.
electrolyte powder, right? The TB12, the DB12 powder. I'm sure it's totally fine. Uh, Often what I drink is like liquid IV, some of those Noom tablets, and then you can actually just go buy. You can just go buy. I just have electrolyte tablets and then there's a section in the book where he talks about reading the dietary information on a bottle. And literally, it's just if you look at this bottle that I have, it's just giving the daily percentages of all of these different, essentially, like trace elements you need. It's like daily percentage of potassium, daily percentage of calcium, daily percentage of zinc that you should be getting ideally from your diet. But if you're not, you can take.
Okay. Do you take? He brought up supplements. Also, would you take supplements?
I now take a daily vitamin, but that's it.
Okay.
And then I take calcium and magnesium. But the magnesium, yet again, is for cramping because often you have people that cramp bad have low magnesium.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
So are you going to start drinking more water now?
I feel like I've been pretty good about drinking water. One surprising thing about the water was that he said it's not super good to drink during the meals,
Yeah,
which I was surprised because I've heard some people say you should drink during the meals because you eat less. But he's saying it messes with the digestion, or interferes, maybe is a better word. So he was saying to try to drink more before and after, but not necessarily during.
That surprised me as well.
So that surprised me, but I've been trying to do better about drinking water and chugging a couple waters, a couple glasses in the morning.
But it sort of brings up you're not supposed to chug. Like you should
Right.
just be generally you should slowly sipping throughout the day. Which is hard. It's like hard to do.
Yeah. But I think he said like you could start the day with like 2 glasses of water,
okay, that's fine.
just to jumpstart your body. So I'm trying to do that and definitely trying to hit the ounces per day that he set. Other than that, yeah.
The other thing he talked about, I mean, we sort of touched on this, but he talked about his workouts. Like, so what did you think about, I guess, some of the workouts?
Well, I really like all the like balancing on one leg. I do a lot of Bosu ball stuff. I totally agree that every time you're doing any sort of balancing, your core is getting like shook or shaken. So you're inherently like gaining core strength. I like all the resistance band stuff. I'm gonna try to work it in more. And some of it actually was kind of like plyometrics, like these hopping things he was describing, but not quite as hardcore as the soccer plyometrics would be probably. But yeah, I liked all the band stuff you recommend. Yeah, he's got all the exercises with pictures so people can follow along. And yeah, some good stuff. I like I was trying the other day, like some of the resistance bands around my weight or my waist while I was doing squats. And it does feel a little different because the force is coming from like a different angle.
Yeah.
So just like anchoring resistance bands at different angles and doing squats or doing movements or shuffles. I like all that stuff. I think that's good.
Are you going to buy his resistance bands?
No.
Yeah.
Just because I think most gyms have what he's basically using.
Yeah.
I mean, he's trying to pitch some of the handles, but I think most gyms have even those.
Yeah, I think so.
So, what about you? You're gonna add some more? Because I mean, we were doing the X3 as is, and a lot of those exercises were identical
Well, yeah, same.
and without the bar.
Right. I was thinking I haven't looked up how much his bands cost or how much he would charge, but I was just thinking if any of my bands broke, it would be a good replacement to know that those are out there.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, like I feel like he does a good job of, even though I feel like he's trying to sell you to use his facility, I feel like he does a good job of like clearly laying out exactly, well, allegedly exactly what he does. So I feel like if in this book your goal was to go live your life like Tom Brady, you could more or less wake up, work out exactly like him, eat more or less exactly like him, and kind of live like him, minus being not Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Which including his diet, like I think will probably was sort of the last part of the book, but he goes intensely through, the diet and nutrition of like what he eats and looks to eat as well.
Yeah, and I guess just the sheer amount of pliability work that he does, because I think he said now that he's older, it's like 50% between his cardio, his strength, and his pliability work is pliability. So 50% of all the like exercises he's doing is pliability.
Yeah, and 50% of strength and cardio.
Yeah. So that I think a lot of people could learn from that because I mean he's kind of debunking the typical way it's just strength and conditioning.
Right.
Whereas he's saying you get older, you need to soften your muscles because we had soft muscles as youngsters, but that kind of goes away. So you have to work on it even more.
Yeah, I mean, it is. He did say if he was starting over again, like at 22, he would do like a quarter pliability and then the remaining strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
I guess in football, like the way they work out is like you run a little bit to get your heart rate up, and then you lift, and then you run some more. That was the gist that I got?
That's kind of how it goes. Yeah.
Okay. But he was saying that is also not optimal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like after reading this, and I kind of had thought about that for a while, like if you're training for a sport, you should do functional lifts and functional exercises for that sport. Like you shouldn't be, you shouldn't be training. If you're a sprinter, you shouldn't be running marathons, I guess.
Yeah.
Is like,
right.
What I'm saying.
Yeah. I like the book.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's kind of like an exercise book and a cookbook all in one. And it's got a lot of cool recipes. So like if you want to refer back in the future, it's easy to look up to see what he's eating and maybe test out a couple of these recipes. We got some caramelized broccoli with smoky romesco sauce, Thai style beef salad, quinoa tabbouleh salad, Caesar salad. You got the TB12 hummus.
Yeah, I didn't know. Was he like starting like a like a Blue Apron type of business with this as well?
TB12 roasted wild salmon and spiced cauliflower with pistachio arugula pesto. It actually looks pretty good.
Right, the meals all look good.
Yeah,
and they lay out like the ingredients, how to cook it. It's all very easy. Grocery list too. I'm like, okay, makes it easy for the people, which is good.
So any final thoughts, Al?
I guess the final thoughts sort of touched on this. He ends the book with, I guess, like mentally conditioning yourself. So he looked like he launched an app where you can practice strengthening your brain and like keeping your brain fresh. I thought that was a good point that probably a lot of people don't talk about, doing brain exercises. I don't know how many people do that. And just like, yeah, the overall point of mental fortitude, something I feel like I've struggled with at times, having somewhat of at points, maybe a defeatist attitude, which I feel like I've now kind of gone over, but earlier in my life, I definitely struggled with. And I guess really like after a competition, the thing you should one of my biggest takeaways is always like after a competition, like the thing you should focus on is not whether you won or lost, but if you feel like you played as well as you could have. Because if you feel like you played up to your potential, like as best as you can, and you still lost, that there's nothing to be upset about then. Just means that the other team or the other person is better than you, and you should just, take it as a learning opportunity versus, if you feel like you made bad decisions or played poorly, then you maybe have some room for grievances of anger.
Okay.
But yeah, but I guess I would say those. The last thing, I guess, he lays out, I guess, the 12 steps. I guess I don't know, should I quickly read through them?
I don't even remember what they are.
Okay,
sure.
it's the very end. So I guess the 12 steps to I don't think he calls them 12 steps, but the last thing just mentions incorporate pliability. So a lot of people aren't obviously doing the pliability. I never heard this word before I read this book. 2 is hydrate. Make sure you're drinking at least half of your body weight in ounces. Reduce or eliminate caffeine, soda, and alcohol. All 3 are pretty bad. I know I struggle drinking Coke. I'm good with not drinking alcohol. I think you're pretty good about all of that.
Yeah.
And then kind of pivots mainly to diet. I mean, the last 2 were diet, but eat real food. Preferably, he's big for preferably organic as well as mostly plant. He also advocates for mostly plant-based. Daily percent of vegetables raw. It's uncooked. I thought that was somewhat interesting. He says shop and eat locally. And then he talks a lot about inflammation as well. And that's an important one. So he actually is correct in this, that a lot of chronic inflammation is a very serious problem that a lot of Americans face. And he does mention that chronic inflammation is linked to a lot of sort of debilitating diseases. A lot of times it's been linked to cancer, diabetes, a lot of arthritis as well, like so reducing inflammation is very important as well as reducing foods that cause inflammation. Supplement your diet, take a multivitamin, and then he says a B12. He also supplements with protein powder or protein bar. I don't know. Do you still take whey protein powder?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, I've never really done that. Do you feel like that was?
It's good. Yeah, I think people, especially if you're not getting enough protein.
Okay, and then
quick way to get protein.
Yeah, and then the last 3 are more about like mental stimuluses. So, essentially at the end, take time to recenter yourself every day. Essentially do some type of meditation and like refocusing. Don't forget that your brain is essentially the most important like part of your body. You need to exercise your brain as well. And he has an app for that. There are definitely some apps I've also used. Let me see if I can still have them. One's called Elevate, which is pretty good, where it's like brain teasers. They're always fun to do. And then I have another one called Impulse.
Okay.
Sort of also fun. And then get enough sleep. That's the end.
Okay. Cool.
So I guess with that said, do you have any final thoughts, Jack?
Not really. I'm just gonna try to do more exercises, keep up with the drinking, and maybe look into some of the supplements. I don't know. I don't take any supplements, so yeah, maybe. So what book do we have next?
We are doing, I don't have it with me right here, but we are doing The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins next.
Cool. So with that said, please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendations, or if you'd like to be a guest host for a particular book you have in mind. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to this would be greatly appreciated. If you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. For the original episodes, the OGs, please visit brothersonbooks.com. Don't forget that 20% off matcha at Encha Matcha in the link below. I am Jack Allwell, and with me, as always, is Alex Allwell, my brother. Al, until next time.
Jack, it's been fun.